You're listening to the Raw Honeys podcast, the place to be real, be love, and be friend. Join Chelsea Fine, Heather Hildenbrand, and me, Amanda Axel. We're real friends who aren't afraid to talk about the raw truth of real life. If you're looking for a group of girlfriends who will support and encourage you when the going gets tough, this is the place to be. Pull up a chair, grab a cup of coffee or a glass of wine, and enjoy the show.
Hey honeys, welcome to today's show. This is Chelsea Fine and I'm here with Heather Hildenbrand and Amanda Axel. And today we want to talk about trust and specifically trusting yourself. So life is full of lots of decisions. It's full of lots of different paths we can take. And sometimes all of those choices and all of the information that we're inundated with all the time can get a little confusing. So sometimes knowing what's right for us or correct or healthiest can sort of get lost in all the confusion of everything else that we're surrounded with all the time. So why not really dig in to this concept of trusting yourself, finding yourself, believing in yourself, and then trusting your instincts or your state of mind or your emotional being, whatever that trusting yourself looks like. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And it kind of has a lot of different facets to it. So we're just sort of going to break the surface a little bit and talk about trust in general. So trust, we could use different words to describe it. We could say faith. We could say hope. We could use a lot of different words. But trust itself as a word is actually pretty potent. Trust implies that there's something respectful in it. Trust implies that there's something deeply rooted that feels stable, safe, or secure. And I think that perhaps that might be the biggest difference between trusting yourself and trusting in an idea or a concept or the outside things. Or the biggest difference between trust and faith or hope or wishing or dreaming, all these things that are wonderful and great. But they all have to begin somewhere. And a lot of times that somewhere, that place, begins deep inside ourselves. So let's talk about it for a second. I want to start with Amanda a little bit today because I really like to watch Amanda build her life. Amanda makes decisions for herself and through her life very carefully after a lot of thought. It's something I really respect because I'm totally the opposite. And so Amanda, what I want to start with today to ask you guys is, do you instinctually trust yourself like on a day-to-day or a pretty often basis? Or is it something that you have to constantly work on or remind yourself about?
It is something that I am constantly working on and have to remind myself to do. But it's gotten a lot better. This is something that I used to really, really struggle with. And this was a very present thing in my life where I would think, oh my gosh, I would constantly question every single decision that I was making because I didn't trust myself.
Like forever, like since you were a child or in your like adult life?
In my adult life, I wasn't very aware of it. Even in my early adulthood, it wasn't until, I don't know, probably 26 or so when I turned 26, sort of my later 20s. The closer I was getting to 30, the closer I feel like my decisions mattered more than they did when I was young. Or I think I had become more comfortable in my own skin at that time. So I was actually trying to make more gut decisions than I had when I was younger. Because when I was younger, I'm you guys know me. I'm just a very practical person. So a lot of my decisions were, so practically based. They made a lot of logical sense. So it was really easy to trust them because I trust logic, I guess. I never really thought about it until I just said it like that right now. But it's easy to trust logic. 2 + 2 is 4, Unless it's logic, not.
Yes.
I am going to disagree. I don't trust 2 + 2 is 4 because it's math and I don't trust math.
Solid point, Heather. Solid point.
Said the non-math lover.
Is this an episode about trusting ourselves or trusting math?
I would pick me over math every time. I'm just saying.
Ooh. So are you saying that like you do, Heather, you tend to naturally just trust yourself? Or is it like something you have to work on?
It's still something I have to work on too, for sure. But I mean, you guys know me. You guys know my past is one that my personality is one that I've dissected why all these things. Like we were laying in bed the other night and I said this whole long thought process to Dylan and he's like, I never think of things like that ever. And I'm like, I know, I do it for you. So like as women, we just think everything to death. So I've thought about this and I know for sure that it's because when I was a kid, I had opinions and emotions and thoughts that differed from my family. And so I was told that my thoughts and feelings were wrong because they didn't agree with them. And only one of us could be right, and I wasn't in charge. So it resulted in a lot of like a diminishing value in how I felt, and therefore a diminished belief in myself or trust in myself. And it's taken me a long time. Like I literally had to go to therapy just to get to the point where I could really decide that how I felt did matter, because it was always, well, I feel this, but it doesn't matter. I feel this. Like I thought I wasn't allowed to feel the way I felt. That's still a thing that I struggle with, is giving myself permission to feel the way I feel. And I don't have anybody telling me not to anymore, but it's like practiced now. So sometimes I'll have to catch myself and go, no, you're allowed to just feel this way. And I hear myself telling my kids that a lot too. You're allowed to feel however you feel. Or somebody else they disagree with and they're like pissed off about it. And I'm like, well, they get to feel how they feel. Everybody gets to feel how they feel. And it's just because of that. But I think now it's a good thing because it's made me aware. It's made me remember to be aware. Like, how are you treating your thoughts right now? How are you treating your feelings right now? Are you making sure they matter? Are you giving them value and weight? You know, and those are the things you have to do if you're going to trust yourself.
And so when we're talking about trust yourself right now, like are we all talking about not just decision making, but like exactly what you're saying, Heather, like our feelings and our perspective on things and stuff like that?
I mean, I think they're kind of the same thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I don't know about men, and I actually feel a little sorry for them because I'm going to say this. I think having our feelings and our thoughts so linked, that's called intuition, and that's a fucking superpower. And I don't think men have the same level of superpower intuition that we do. So for me, it's the same. And I'm really glad.
Yeah. Men could have the exact same anything. Men.
Yeah, I mean, they do. I think some of them probably aren't as in touch with it as others.
Well, with their feelings. Like culturally, men are kind of conditioned not to like overfeel.
Yeah.
Shame.
It's a shame, right? That's why I said I feel sorry for them.
Yeah.
I know.
Here we are, we're having feelings about them not having feelings.
Listen, men, if you're listening to the Raw Honeys, you're allowed to feel how you feel. Yeah, and we feel for you. There's a lot of feelings and it's okay.
That, you know what though, that actually is kind of a cool question though. Like, do you guys think that men trust themselves? Like, I know that's not really what we're talking about here, but it's an interesting question. Like,
but they do. So I take it all back. I can't feel that sorry. I mean, they do. They trust themselves. They're way more confident than we are, even when they're wrong.
Especially when they're wrong. I mean, I know we're stereotyping. We're making huge generalizations right now.
Or we're thinking of very specific people that we're not going to name. That's pretty much.
We're thinking of
right.
Yeah.
Well, you know, it's funny. It's funny that you guys say that because I'm sitting here thinking, like, I think it just depends on their personality because I know, like, with my husband, he's an overthinker just like I am. Like, every time we take a personality test, we end up being the same personality. Which always really surprises me.
Whoa.
It always really surprises me how similar we are and how similar we think because at face value, it does not appear that way. Yeah. Even when you meet,
I know, I
exactly. Even just meeting us, you wouldn't guess it that way. So, and I was thinking even with Heather, you know, how Heather seems so confident and so sure of herself and so sure of her decisions, and she'll just say what she's thinking in the moment. She doesn't overthink it. So I would never think that someone like Heather has to work at trusting herself because to me, it's a very natural thing. And I've always known her to be that way. So I'm assuming that she just is kind of like that. So I think perception of someone trusting themselves and actually trusting themselves are two different things, maybe.
totally different things. Like, yeah, if you convey confidence, that comes across as you trusting yourself. Because I would say the same thing about Heather, too. If I had to guess.
Totally.
I would have said, Heather always trusts herself.
I trust Heather because she seems to trust herself. So I'm like, all right, we're going to do it. We're going for it.
Y'all better stop trusting me then, because...
It's too late, Heather. We're already in it. We already published the podcast.
Whoops. Yeah. We're already on this road, okay?
Oh, shit. No. What's funny is if I had to describe how and why I'm able to say how I'm feeling so easily, it's, we always joke about how I'm a rebel. I like to be the rebel. There is a version of this, to me, saying how I feel in a given moment is a form of rebellion. Even still, because it's so ingrained in me not to, or that it's not allowed, or it's not going to be welcomed, or it's not going to be valued. And I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just going to say it anyway. And that's me rebelling, kind of, even though you guys don't, you're like, cool. I never said you couldn't. Calm down. Calm down.
We welcome your thoughts and opinions, Heather. Always.
Yeah. And that's still kind of weird for me, I don't know. I mean, not all the time, but sometimes. But I will say, being able to voice my thoughts and feelings is different than trusting them or believing in myself. That's two different things. Like, I can acknowledge, a feeling or a thought and even give it to you out loud, but then that deep-seated belief or faith in myself is different. I struggle with faith.
So let's talk about that. Like, what does trusting yourself, what does that actually look like? Because we're talking about how there is like a difference, even though feelings and trust and intuition, that's all connected. But what does it actually look like to trust yourself?
I don't know. Maybe that's different for everybody, because I think for me, and I even have heard, like Amanda and I have talked about this with Buddhism before, is part of trusting yourself is deciding to believe that you are enough. And that's a thing I think a lot of women struggle with. And so if you don't think you're enough to, for your family or to achieve your dreams or just in general to keep up with all your daily tasks, then how are you going to trust your feelings or your instincts or your intuition on really anything? Because you're already walking around diminished.
Well, and it explains why we, not just as women, but as human beings, like why we second guess ourselves all the time, all throughout life, in all different circumstances and situations.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like that feeling of being enough. It's interesting because, like, for me, I would say that I do trust myself, but I would say that I trust myself in an almost reckless manner. Like,
you do, Chelsea.
We like it.
Love you. We like it a lot.
I know. Like, I trust myself. Like, I trust myself knowing, like, fully aware that I could be very much wrong, and sometimes I am, But I do trust myself, like, almost blindly. So for me, I almost have to, when I get a gut instinct about something and I'm going to follow it and trust it and believe in it, I almost need to check myself a little bit, like, along the way. Like, is this really, am I trusting myself for good reasons, or am I trusting myself because it feels good to believe that I'm enough in this moment? Because for me, at least, believing that I'm enough is not always my actual reality. Like, this might sound crazy, but I can convince myself that I believe in something for myself, even if that's not how I really feel deep down. But if I'm trying to accomplish something, I can, like, talk myself into, or give myself enough reasons or like things to support it so that I can continue on.
Do you think that's because you believe that everything's going to be okay no matter what for you?
Yeah. Yes. Actually, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, is that reckless?
No, that's what we love about you, and that's what we're jealous of.
That right there, I would say, is faith as opposed to trust, though, right?
And if you think about it, like, what I was thinking when you were talking was from a manifestation perspective, where if we sort of trick ourselves into believing, and I don't want to say trick ourselves, but I'm going to just say that.
I love tricking myself. How about we say bamboozled?
If you bamboozle yourself,
bamboozled.
We do love that word. Yeah. It's one of our favorites. But if you believe that you are enough, and you believe whatever path you're on is the thing and you trust it, then how is that wrong? Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like that kind of emotion, that kind of feeling is strong enough to overpower any kind of circumstances that are in your environment.
Well, I think it goes back to the faith, because if it's like, first you have to decide that everything is working out for you. Otherwise, you're the kind of person who believes that everything is not going to work out for you. And if you go into any kind of decision, whether you're trying to trust your gut or not, expecting bad things, you're going to get bad things, versus like Chelsea really has faith and believes she's going to be okay no matter what. And guess what? She is.
She totally is.
It's worked out so
far. So take a tip from Chelsea Fine.
I think it's like hope versus hopeless, because
good distinction. Great distinction.
Hope is like the definition of faith. Hope is just believing that there is something better, either in the future of this life or in the next. That's really a foundation of any kind of faith, whether it's in a higher power or in yourself. And so if you've lost your hope and you're just kind of negative, you're just kind of beaten and you're like defeated, then there is no trusting yourself. I don't even know if it's possible. I can't imagine feeling confidence in my own decisions or intuition or whatever if I'm just expecting terrible things.
Right. Well, and I would say, at least for me, I think purpose, I have to have a purpose or something bigger and greater than myself sort of embedded in all my, like, you know, big life choices or whatever, my paths that I go down. And would you say that maybe like feeling, if you believe that everything has a purpose, you know, that everything teaches us, that everything has some kind of merit to it, that would probably change the way that you feel about trusting yourself.
Yeah, because you're going to reframe, you know, it's like, it wasn't a failure, it was a lesson, or everything that happens to you is now reframed. It's not like bad and good anymore.
Yeah, that reminds me of a book we read a few years ago called A Home with God by Neale Donald Walsch.
Oh,
yes.
That book.
It's an amazing book. Oh my goodness. Incredible. One thing he said in that book, and I'm probably paraphrasing because it's been so long since I read it, is that all paths lead home. So meaning, and he talks about this in the book too, that you really can't make a mistake. Like, you can't get it wrong. You can't screw it up. And when I think about that, I think about like being on this path, right? So imagine that you're on this path and then you veer off and you go around, right? You go somewhere else, but you're really supposed to be, right? Like, quote, supposed to be on this straight path. But what ends up happening is you still come back to that same path. And you actually haven't lost any time, because this detour that you've taken has actually created value for whatever is ahead of you on this path.
Yeah.
But if you believe that deviating from the path is just wrong no matter what, now you've colored any experience you would have had along that way.
Totally.
So would you say that believing that deviating from the path is wrong, like, would you say that that can still be a productive perspective to take in life? Or would you guys say that maybe it could act like as a hindrance to like our achievements?
Oh, totally a hindrance. I mean, because for me, that sounds a lot like growing up in church. And the God that I was taught in church growing up was a God that wouldn't really condone you believing in yourself, because that was too much like trying to do it without him. And that he has this plan for you and you're supposed to be walking the path with him. And if you deviate from that, now you've deviated from God. And so it was very black and white, and it was very disempowering individually too, as your own human person. And so that was actually the hardest time I ever had at having faith in a higher power and in myself, because I just always felt like it was designed to make me feel bad about myself, about everything. And like, if I got anything good in my life, it was because God decided to give it to me. It wasn't like, I don't know, it was just disempowering. So it was like, well, then cool. So like, there's nothing I can do to like make good things happen. He just has to decide or something.
Right. It's not up to you. You have no responsibility for your own life.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, I did. I had a lot of rules, and you know me and rules, so that didn't work. And so it wasn't even just that it was more empowering, but it was just a way more joyful way to live when I left that. And I mean, this is going into like a spiritual conversation now, but
no, but our spiritual lives are directly tied into how we see ourselves.
I think they are.
I
think they are.
Sure.
And I think maybe it doesn't matter what name you give it. It doesn't matter if you want to believe in a higher power or not necessarily, but if you have a faith or belief in something that is hindering your belief in yourself or your road to experiencing joy in this life, then maybe it's worth re-examining. Because the thing that I do want to say when it comes to either faith in a higher power or trust in yourself is that you do get a choice about what you believe in. Because I thought for a really long time that belief was just something that once it was in there, you couldn't get rid of it. And it was difficult, but it's not like a 2 + 2 = 4. It feels like it is. And it's not just because I don't like math or I'm a rebel or whatever. Like this will work for anyone. But you can choose to believe something else, because a belief is just a thought you keep thinking over and over. So if you want to pick a different thought and keep thinking it over and over again, eventually it's going to become a belief. And if you have these beliefs that don't serve you, it would behoove you to try to change them, to replace them with better suited beliefs, like your feelings do matter and your thoughts do have value and everything is always working out for you and deviating from the path is still the path. Like, don't those sound way better than the alternative, right? Why wouldn't you choose to believe that,
And those things are really perspective based, right?
Yes.
Because just to be totally different than what Heather's saying, but exactly the same. I was also raised in a really like conservative, beautifully religious, spiritual kind of like family. And I grew up in church, and it's interesting because I would actually say that my crazy belief in myself or trusting myself is actually something, because I've been that way since I can remember, like since my very earliest memories. I've in my head always been like, yeah, I'm just going to go with my gut on this. Right. But I believe that a big part of that for me in my life has been because I have generally always considered myself like a child of God, if not a piece of God directly. And so trusting in myself was the same as trusting that God's going to take care of me, which probably directly plays into this, overall life belief I have that everything's going to be okay. Because it is, at least when I was growing up and really heavily involved in church, that is exactly how I saw the world and life and everything. It was like, okay, God created me and he loves me. And so I'm just going to go for it. Like, yes. Totally like really similar upbringings, you and I, but like maybe, the way that our God was presented to us and the way that our religious rituals or our spirituality was shaped for us when we were younger probably played a huge role in how we perceived, ourselves, like our ability to believe in ourselves, all of that. So it is interesting. And I honestly don't know if we can actually separate our spirituality from trusting in ourselves, because our spirituality is ourselves, right? Or I don't know. Amanda, what do you think?
Yeah, well, it's funny because when we started this conversation, trusting in yourself, for me, I'm thinking largely about intuition. And I really do think that intuition and whatever spiritual life we have or whatever higher power that there is, however you want to name it or call it or believe in it, they're the same thing. In my experience, yes. They're very much the same thing. And I know with me, because I have really struggled with trusting myself, the universe / my intuition has to be very loud with me. I've told you guys this before. It has to.
Yeah.
Be really blunt.
Like, it has to actually have a legitimate like billboard with words on it that I could read, or an audio I can listen to, or, a direct message. Yeah. Like it can't be subtle, because subtlety, I don't trust subtlety. That's why, because I don't, and I've had so many instances in my life where I made decisions thinking that I was trusting myself, but not really actually listening to my intuition, not being able to distinguish between like my intuition and my fear, right? And I think also our fear is like the antithesis to our spiritual life or to our intuition, right? It's like the
it's like kryptonite to our superpower.
It is. Well, what it is, it's the illusion, right? Like it's the illusion to what's real, and what's real is that all things are possible. What's real is that you are amazing, you are enough. And so all of this negativity or this fear is constantly telling us, nope, that's not true. Look at all the evidence in the universe. And you're like, oh yeah, that's true. I saw that thing on the news. Or like, yeah, that's true. I did fail, quote, fail that one time. So it's really tricky. But I think to answer your question, yeah, I definitely do think that they're related. But I also think too that like, it's a muscle that you have to develop. And I think you guys can totally agree with this. And, Chelsea's been developing this muscle since she was a little girl. And, Heather's been working on it for a while, and hers is very strong. She's like lifting heavy weights, like that's why she's so strong. And like is. Me, I got my little like 10-pounder weights, like little dumbbells, so it's like I'm growing. But I think when you learn to trust, when you build more trust in yourself, you become more open. And when you are more open, this intuition, this higher power, whatever you want to call it, speaks to you louder and louder and louder. And it's really amazing when you're able to open yourself up to that. And I mean, there will be moments in my life where I see something or hear something and I'm like, wow, this is for me. This is a sign for me, And I own it too,
And that's so special. It feels so special.
Yeah, because you're the center of your universe.
Or you should be. You should be the center of your universe in a non-selfish way.
Well, we all are. That's just the human experience, is that you are. If you weren't, you would die. I mean, you have to be to survive.
Absolutely. Although I would say that, like, I think maybe our culture or society, or maybe this is just like kind of how it works in big groups, like I would say that we're not really encouraged necessarily to trust ourselves as individuals when we're talking like on the big picture, right?
Yeah.
And so it is something we almost have to dig for. Like it's something we almost have to defend. Like Heather, like when you talk about like having that rebellious like point in your life, or several points in your life where you're just choosing to trust yourself despite all the things around you and your environment, your circumstances, like I actually think that is maybe the hardest part about trusting ourselves, is to go against the grain, quote unquote, of like what society wants or what culture wants. Because if we're all the same and if we all just go with what we're told to go with, we're very easy to, I don't know, control or manipulate or to keep docile or whatever all these things are, right? So it does take a little bit of bravery. A lot of bravery.
Yeah. It's very easy to trust yourself when you brush your teeth in the morning. That's a trustworthy thing. But when you decide, I think I'm going to start a business, there's more risk in that.
Way more risk. And lots of naysayers. Or that has been
my experience too.
I think the naysayers carry more weight with the less self-belief you have, the more weight the naysayers carry. And that's why I'm so determined to always stay in that place of knowing for myself, because that's the only way to keep their opinions out of my head. Because I know you guys remember this. I know you guys remember this time when I moved to Florida and I had custody issues because I had my kids' dads telling them that I abandoned them and I was a terrible mom and all of this. And remember, it did get in my head because I was hearing it. Well, I wasn't just hearing it from them. I was hearing it from lots of family, right? Like all angles kind of. And it did get in my head, but it's like the way it got out of my head was because I had to remind myself I am who I say I am, not who they say I am. And so, but I had let my guard down. And I think that's what really showed me that the stronger my own self-belief is and like my confidence and I knowing who I am, the less they can really mess with me.
That's right. Well, and the more empowered you are on like an inner individual level, which is priceless. That is priceless for each of us as individuals to feel like what you said earlier, like we're enough, or to feel like we're capable. I mean, Heather, you're probably the very best, you will probably always be one of the very best real life examples that I will ever encounter of trusting yourself despite ...
Oh my
because
God.
you really consistently, to this day, continue to have to do that. And actually, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the benefits of trusting yourself, because Heather, I know your life has completely reflected your choices to believe in yourself and choose your own path. Like, let's talk about the benefits, because if trusting yourself takes bravery, if trusting yourself means you're going against the grain, and if it also means that you're going to have to literally trust yourself, which is scary, like, why bother doing it? And, you know, the answer is that there has to be great payoff. Yes?
Yes, totally. But first you have to realize that whatever evidence you look for, you're going to find. And you were talking at the beginning about how we are inundated with just the world around us, our environment and our society and our culture, people telling us what they think and that they think they know best for us, which is just what I was talking about at the beginning with, you know, my family, and how we were talking about how everyone is the center of their own universe. And the problem is they try to impose that on you, because if you disagree with them, they need you to agree in order to feel better about themselves. I understand that that's what was happening to me. I understand it wasn't personal. I understand it was like you're conditioned to try to make your own life easier by making everyone else, you know, conform to you. That's just like our go-to. And we have to catch ourselves not to do that with our children or anyone else in our lives, you know. But anyway, it's just everywhere, right? And you were talking about that at the beginning. And that's why it's important. That's why you have to trust yourself, because if you don't, everyone else is going to decide for you. And then you're going to look back and you're going to be pissed that you wasted it, you know, because it was nothing that you wanted. It was none of the things you wanted to pursue, or none of the way you didn't want to feel this way. You felt the way they wanted you to feel, or whatever. And so just remember that whatever evidence you look for, you're going to find. If you look for evidence of everything is terrible, everything I do fails, I always fall on my face, I'm never going to achieve what I'm after. If you look for evidence or proof of that, like Amanda was saying about how the fear will be like, oh yeah, you're terrible and here's why. And you'll be like, oh yeah, I saw that thing on the news. It's like that. When you go looking for that evidence, you're going to find it. So you have to start looking for the evidence you want to find. And it's actually there, which is so fucking crazy. It was there the whole time, right? So the thing I did that changed everything, and whenever I sort of fall off the wagon, quote unquote, because this is a practice, us feeling this way all the time, it's like we don't wake up every day feeling this way. We have people in our lives telling us we're terrible, like I just said about my custody stuff. So it's a practice. And so there are times I fall off. And the thing that I always, always, always go back to is gratitude. And I know you guys feel the same. You do the same. We talk all the time about all the things we're grateful for. And when you take time to do that, and when you take time to look for things to be grateful for, you will find them. It's just the law of the universe, you know?
So true.
So that's really what turned the tide for me. And now I do have benefits of trusting myself. It doesn't mean I don't have hard situations or I don't doubt myself, but my life is transformed. I mean, I was in a bad marriage. I was in a bad family situation. I've been in dysfunctional relationships my whole life. You guys know, when I became friends with you, and even still sometimes I'm like, I don't know what friendship, like healthy friendship, is supposed to look like. I thought I was bad at friends. I thought none of my friendships had worked out and they had all fallen apart because I just didn't know how to be a friend, which sounded really fifth grade, but it was just what I convinced myself, you know, because again, that was the evidence I was looking for. That was the pattern I decided it meant, you know.
Well, it's very common too. Lots of people, I'm sure, feel the exact same
I've
way.
heard so many women in our Raw Honeys group talking about that they thought they were the problem. So you just have to understand what evidence is your fear making you look for. But now it's transformed totally. I mean, I have beautiful, healthy friendships. I used to think I couldn't handle more than like one, maybe two friends at a time. And I really thought that. I thought that's just how I'm built. You know, I'm just not, you know.
I'm a 1 to 2 friend person.
That's what I thought. That sounds so
You've got
stupid.
Like a max.
Yeah. I'm like, I hit my quota with Chelsea and Amanda. I'm just going to stay. Like gambling. Like, nope, I'm going to stay. You know, let it ride, you know. I really did think that. And I think now that I'm looking for evidence and I'm focused on the positive and on the gratitude, I'm doing things that I really never thought. Like I'm able to maintain many healthy friendships, and I am in an amazing marriage, and my kids are thriving, and I haven't killed their biological fathers yet. That might be the only progress, but I'll take it.
That's amazing progress, though, Heather.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah, and so, you know what? I want to say this too, really quick, because some people are listening to this like, well, that's cool, but my family is a shit show. Listen, maybe the win is that you got up the balls to cut out the dysfunctional person from your life. Maybe you can't transform it right now to be like rainbows and unicorns, right? I beat myself up, you guys know, so many times for so long that I couldn't transform that into something like a storybook or whatever. But maybe it's just you trusting yourself and what you need and your boundaries enough to stop trying to live up to some impossible expectation and get dumped on all the time and create a new boundary around yourself. Maybe that's all it is, but that's still a win. The thing is, though, like you can choose what that is evidence of. That you can choose. Was that a failure then, or was that a win? And you have to decide how you're going to look at it.
Oh, exactly. What a great point. Like how you're going to look at everything in life. Actually, it matters. Your perspective absolutely matters.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. And then it's worth it, on the other side, the benefits.
Yeah.
Like, what about you, Amanda? You've seen lots of benefits, I'm sure, in your life from trusting yourself, going with your gut.
Yeah. So all of my benefits have been mostly intangible at this point.
But those are benefits. They don't have to be material or physical.
Girl, I'm tangible. I don't know what you're talking about.
That's right. I'm tangible too, usually. I'm usually tangible. Sometimes I'm kind of like a feather in the wind.
That's true. But I always think when I think of relationships, to me, that's an intangible thing because it's the connection, it's the love between you.
I like to think of the tangible. Yeah.
But yeah, I think for me, getting to a certain point in my life where I was like, you know what, I'm just going to do it. Because I had this point where I'd become a financial advisor and I hated it. And I felt like a square peg being forced into this round hole. And it was very painful, like emotionally painful for me, which is so weird. And I had decided, I can't do this, even though this is the safe path for me. This is a practical path for me. This is like something people won't question, I'm not going to get any, flack for this. I knew it wasn't right because it was so painful. And so that's when I decided to really double down on writing and my art and publishing. And that was a huge risk. And I'm so fortunate that my husband was so supportive of that because I didn't have to have too much confidence in it because he had a lot of confidence in it. So I was able to pursue it. I don't know what things would have been like if he gave me a lot of pushback, honestly. Like, I don't know where I'd be. So he's my benefit.
We should talk about that for a second, though, because when you can't muster the belief in yourself for something, but you have someone in your corner who carries you and has it for you, like what kind of difference that can make.
Yes.
So powerful. It is. So actually, everybody deserves to have at least one person in their corner. And I know most of us don't. Most of us don't have that privilege. But if you can find somebody in your life that like is your legitimate cheerleader for whatever paths you're going to choose, like keep that person close and take good care of them because you can't replace that with anything else.
Yeah.
Like having like somebody truly believe in you, especially when you can't believe in yourself or when you're exhausted or when your confidence is shot.
Yeah, well, that's why we have each other, and that's why we started this podcast, you guys.
Yes, it is.
So that we could be that person for all the honeys that don't already have that, because it is priceless.
Really, that is why we started this podcast. And it's kind of a beautiful thing to talk about in this actual episode about trust, because, the three of us, we're business women. We are business professionals. We do things logically for the sake of achieving our business goals all the time. We have to, you have to keep it together in order to continue to succeed especially when you're going to be like a public persona or, have a fan base or something like that. It's really important. But like this project, I'm calling the podcast a project because we are still new at this, but like this project consistently requires trust from each of us as individuals and from the three of us as a trio, like all the time, right? Like aren't the three of us constantly coming together saying, hey guys, we don't know what we're doing, or this is hard, or I had a long day, but like I still believe in this. How about you? Like, right? Like trust has been
well, but that's
crucial.
because we balance it with, I mean, right before we started recording this, I was giving you guys a pep talk and telling you how awesome you are. So we balance it out with, hey, you're doing an amazing job, you know?
Well, and I would even say that, and this is more like maybe just a personal philosophy that I take with trusting myself, but it's almost like I tend to go after things in my life. I trusted myself enough to go after certain things in my life with two main ideas that I always keep at the forefront. One, I'm always cool if I fail. Like I don't want to embark on a project where I'm going to lose it if I fail. Like it's really important for me to gear up in my head before I start something and tell myself, okay, so what happens if I completely fall on my face here? Am I going to keep trying? And if the answer is no, then that's not a project for me. If falling on my face will knock me down completely for the project, that means I'm not passionate enough about it. But then if the answer is yes, if I fall on my face, I'm going to continue to try until I'm great at it. That's a project for me.
Yeah.
So that's something I always keep like, like at the front of my head, like, okay, am I cool with failing? Because in anything that you succeed at, you have to fail at it tens of thousands of times, I'm sure, throughout like whatever that path is, however long it is. And the second thing I tell myself is that, or ask myself, is this a project that I would do even if success is not at the end of this? Is this a project that I would embark on simply for my own satisfaction or my own growth or my own quality of life? And the answer to that question always has to be yes for me too, because then like with the podcast or with any project, then no matter what I'm investing my heart into and my time into and my work into, at the end of the day, it doesn't actually matter because I'm doing it for myself at the core. But I need to make sure that I am honestly doing it for myself at the core, right?
Yeah.
Before I start. But I do think that those things really kind of help me maintain this idea that I'm always going to be okay.
Well, they help maintain clarity because anytime I lose belief or trust in myself, my feelings, my intuition, or like if it gets drowned out, usually is what happens. And like Amanda was saying earlier, I can't tell the difference between that and fear is just because it's been drowned out. Because I'm stressed or I'm afraid, I let the fear of failure or I get caught up in the possibilities of what could happen. I let all that get to me. And then it just gets too, like muddy. And then I lose it.
Daunting.
Yeah. And then I lose my connection to it. So it is like a muscle. It is something that we have to work. It's like we have to pay attention to it on a regular basis so that we recognize its voice when it talks to us and we can tell the difference between, the intuition and the fear, and we don't get bamboozled by it.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. No, but that's a great point. And actually, like, what are some ways that we, as individuals, the three of us, but also like to talk to our honeys, like, what are some ways that we do actively practice trusting ourselves? Like, what does that actually look like on a day-to-day basis? Or
It's funny because when you were talking about your 2 points, it made me think about something Marie Forleo shared. I know I talk about her a lot, but she's kind of one of my mentors and she's amazing. Her. But she talks about, when you're about to make a decision, does that, or about to do something, like, does it make you feel bigger? Like, does it like physically open you up? Like Chelsea's always open. That's how you know that she's on the right path, because she's always like got her arms out and she's like just wide open.
Crazy.
Or does it make you feel smaller? Does it make you want to cower in? But this can be a very, very tricky thing, because I have definitely been in situations where I'm faced with something and it's so big that I almost want to shy away from it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
that's tricky.
It is really hard sometimes to distinguish what's fear and what's faith. right? Or what you should have faith in and what you should be listening to.
Well, maybe it comes down to like, first you have to have self-belief that you are capable. So it's like, there's a success quote that's like, what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? And so you have to go into it like with that level of confidence. And so starting with that level of confidence, now what does this idea make you feel like?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you for finishing that. That was great.
Sorry, were you gonna
No,
say
that was perfect. That was perfect.
Well, because I was thinking, I love Marie Forleo, and I'm so glad she said that. And back before, well, I won't say before Marie Forleo, but before I knew her, this was, I don't know, this was 10 years ago. Oh my gosh. I was in Mary Kay, and I'm so grateful for that experience actually, because it taught me a lot of leadership qualities that I use now a lot. And so it was a great experience, and I got mentored by my sales director as I was becoming a sales director. And one of the things she said to me, she would say all the time was, if your goal doesn't make you want to throw up, it's not big enough. And it's basically what Marie Forleo is saying. And that's what I always think about. It's like, but again, it's all perspective. And it's like, do you want to throw up because you think you're not good enough? Because that's not what we're saying here. It's like, it's so big that you're just like, it's like a good throw up, which I know doesn't really exist because I hate throwing up. I hate it a lot. And I'm not saying there's a good throwing up. But there's a good little, like, I don't know, underlying excitement there. You know, it's like that.
Or like maybe even like, why do you actually want to throw up in that moment? Because I know that a lot of times we want to throw up because it feels like daunting or way too big, or we feel incapable. But other times we want to throw up because the idea of going after it and not getting it makes us sick to our stomach.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I think for me, like that right there, if I feel like throwing up because it's something I want so bad that I can't even process the concept of not getting it, like those are the things we really should race after, right? We should fly off a cliff in pursuit of
yeah,
them, right?
Well, and I think also the other part of it is like what she was saying, and what I totally 100% believe for everybody listening to this is that none of that is going to happen until you get outside your comfort zone. And so that feeling of like, I might be sick right now because this is that awesome. Like that sounds like a juxtaposition, but it's just that getting outside of what's familiar. It's just beyond what you, even with confidence, what you are 100% sure you're capable of. You have to go just beyond that. And that's where all of the like miracle kind of stuff lies.
Oh yeah.
That's where the pot of gold is, for sure. And actually, I just want to like make a comment really fast about comfort zones, because like something that I've learned in life is that our comfort zone it's like our comfort zones change and they grow and they evolve with us. So stepping outside our comfort zone into something that's scary, that scary place can easily become our new comfort zone.
It will once you are there. Yeah, it's amazing.
And then you just got to find a new one and step into that.
And that's why when you look at all these people that you deem either successful or just like where you want to be or whatever, it's like they didn't just wake up one day and get there either. It's those incremental stepping outside of your comfort zone until it becomes normal, and then doing it again until it becomes normal, and then doing it again. It's all incremental steps, but it was all, I guarantee, it was all from that place of self-belief and trust and intuition and knowing and just everything that's the opposite of listening to that voice of fear.
Exactly. Well, and that voice of fear can sometimes get really tangled with like a voice of doubt when we choose a path that doesn't go the way we hope, right? Because sometimes we trust ourselves and we take action and it doesn't play out the way that we were intending and stuff. So like, what do we do in those moments? Or what do you guys do as individuals when you trust yourself, but it doesn't really play out the way you would like?
You know, I am seeing evidence of this more and more and more. And part of this is like my practice, but I really believe that somehow we're all being protected all the time. And so when things don't happen on our timeline, it's not a bad thing. It just means that it's not the right time, like it's not the right opportunity, like something so much bigger and greater is waiting for us if we can just be patient and not give up. I think that's the most important thing. And really this comes down to like when you're learning to trust yourself, don't give up on trusting yourself. You know what I mean? Like don't just write yourself off like, you know what? I did this, I did that, it didn't work out. Clearly, I can't trust myself, so I'm not even going to try anymore. Don't do that, honeys. Stop right there.
It won't help you.
Yeah, keep going, because I think eventually, because I mean, how many instances in your life and listeners in your life where you're like, where you look back in your life and you see the broader picture, you see the big perspective of why things happened the way they happened, when they did happen, even in the moment you're like, oh, this really sucks, or this is not what I wanted, or this isn't how I imagined it, but it all kind of makes sense at the end. You know, just like in any book, right? Like in the novels we write, like there's trouble on the horizon and it's like, oh no. But when you get to the end of the book, then you can understand the big picture and why it all matters and how it all came together in the end.
Yeah.
Everything is just a chapter or even a paragraph. Everything we're going through, we're always in the middle of our story. Or that's how I look at it for me.
Yeah.
I don't know. Heather, what about you?
Well, I think it's just what we talked about earlier about perspective, because anytime I start to feel like, you know, I'm getting bogged down or stressed or lost in like the doubt or the fear, or if, you know, I'll have a bad day or a stressful day and all of a sudden I'm like feeling like this is what my life is like all the time. And I have to catch myself and I have to go, okay, first of all, your worst day at work is still way better than a day working for someone else. So it's all perspective. It's all me forgetting to be grateful. It's all me forgetting that like I pulled a long day today, but I didn't do it for someone else. I am still my own boss. Or, you know, I had a terrible day with my kids, but this box of wine is called, no, I don't know. Sometimes that's the bright side. Okay. I'm not saying it's easy to find one. I'm just saying you got to look. So
you do.
And if you look, then you'll find
it.
If
you look, you'll find the
wine. It might be a box of wine.
You'll find the perspective, you know, you'll find something.
You know, yeah, you'll find something to make it better.
Well, and as long as like anything that you are considering maybe failure or giving up or falling on your face or something, as long as you're able to find any takeaway in it that can be applied to you moving forward, like that's total success in my mind. You know, like I fail a lot. I try a lot of crazy things and I run after a lot of things that I want, and I fail all the time. And now I'm like almost too comfortable failing now. Like it's almost like we might need to stage an intervention at some point. But like there is something really empowering that I find in looking back at what I considered my quote unquote failures. Because a lot of times those failures that I define them as failures in the moment at the time, but now looking back, those failures are the very reason I'm made of steel when it comes to certain things that I'm going after now. You know, like everything shapes us, everything changes us, and anything can become armor or a tool for sure.
Yeah. Actually, that's funny that you say that, because it's so fortunate that you have that capacity just very naturally, the way that you came to be. But in our culture, in our society, we are taught not to fail. Like we are taught to be so afraid or so far from failure that we don't even see it. Like it's got to be so far out of our eyesight.
Yeah, like there's shame or something.
There's so much. Oh my God, there's so much shame around failure in our society. And that is why, I think that is probably the exact reason why we don't want to even try to trust ourselves, or we feel like we can't trust ourselves, because what if I trust myself and I fail? Yeah. Then I shouldn't do it. I should trust logic. Yeah. I should trust that 2 + 2 is 4, because that's the only option. I don't know if that's the best example, but you guys,
safe. No, yeah,
it's safe. It's safe, and you're not going to fail when you play it safe. But you know what? You're not going to win big either. Mm. And I think that trusting yourself, because, we all came here for a reason, right? We're all very purposeful. We all have some kind of mission on this planet. We're all meant to do really great things. And that looks like a lot of different things for a lot of different people. And when we don't trust ourselves, when we don't listen, when we don't open ourselves up, then we are lessening our chances of having this really incredible experience in our life. So it's really a shame that in our society, that's how we're brought up, to be afraid of failure. So I don't think you can be too comfortable with failure. I love that you're super comfortable with failure, because it just means that you are living to the fullest. And you're not reckless,
Well,
okay? Like, you own a house,
That's true.
and you have a family, and you have
I'm
a lot of stability.
responsible-ish. Yeah.
Yes, you are. You are.
Sometimes I consider myself a little recklessly brave, but that I think is why it's very important that I surround myself with really fantastic people and friends like you guys, people who like can kind of be my mirror and keep me in check when like I might be reaching for the stars a little too early. Like sometimes there's steps that you got to take, but I do.
But that's so good. That's
It
so
is.
good, because you know what? Because every good thing that exists on this planet is because somebody was brave enough to reach for the stars.
Oh, that bravery. It just always comes back around. You're right. You're right. That's a great takeaway. Somebody write that down. It's totally true. And I know that we're kind of
Everything amazing.
Anything that's worthwhile, anything that's worth talking about, at least. It always started with a first step, a bravery and stuff. And I know our episode's almost coming to a close here, so I want to make sure that we leave our honeys with some really encouraging words about trusting themselves despite their environment or their circumstances, and just leave them feeling really empowered. Because if nothing else, at the end of this episode, even if it's only for 5 seconds, I want all of our honeys to truly believe that they are capable of believing in themselves. So, Amanda, what do you want to leave our honeys with today?
I think I want to say to the honeys, it's okay if you feel like you can't trust yourself right now. That's really normal. I've been there. I still have days like that. Clearly, we all still have days like that.
I have days like that. I have them all the time. I do.
Okay, so we all have days like that. So that's a very natural thing, and it's okay. It doesn't mean that you cannot build trust with yourself or that your intuition is broken. All it means is that it just needs a little TLC. And I think if you are conscious of it and you open yourself up and you continue to work that muscle, and like Heather was saying, practice, it's a practice, then you can definitely develop more trust in yourself, which translates into more confidence, which translates into more courage and bravery, which translates into so much value and joy in this world.
Girl, preach it.
Oh my God.
What about you, Heather?
I love it when she gets sassy. I would say ditto to everything that Amanda said. Practice makes perfect. Just keep listening, and so that you can learn the difference between your fear and your superpower, because they are different. I would say don't measure your self-belief against anybody else's or against what you think it's supposed to look like, because, maybe your one act of self-belief is something really small that it's just taking you just that one step outside of your comfort zone, and nobody else may even recognize that you've done it. It might just be avoiding that one toxic person at work today instead of letting them talk to you because you are too afraid to tell them to shut it. Or, it could be so small, but start with one thing where sometimes self-belief is honoring yourself, honoring what you need and your boundaries. And you don't have to impose it on anybody else, but you are allowed to enforce it for you. So I give you permission and encouragement and all the rebel vibes I can send you through this podcast, whatever it takes for you to do it. And when you need a cheering section and you don't have anybody in your corner, that is exactly what we are for. And that is why we're here. So find us on Facebook, join our group. It really is a safe space where everybody just kind of spills their guts like it's girlfriend time. And we really, really want for you to be there and doing that too. Or send us a message on Instagram or Facebook and let us know what small thing you did to honor your own sense of self-belief.
Let us celebrate with you. That's beautiful. Oh, so good. So good. And honeys, I would just say, well, first of all, I just want to say that you are worth it. Whatever it is, even if you don't know what it is right now, you are worth it. Your very existence is proof that you are worth it. The whole reason that the three of us started this podcast is because we wanted women everywhere to feel strong and safe and capable and beautiful about who they are and where they're going. And that's not something that automatically happens when you wake up in the morning, no matter who you are. That's something that like we're all saying here, that's a practice. It's something that comes with time, and it's something that you have to constantly remind yourself of. But you're worth it. And like a personal philosophy of mine, when it comes to taking those first steps or those acts of bravery, those small or large acts of rebellion, if it's like that in your life, like when it comes to mustering up courage like that, what I would say to you is ask yourself what the worst case scenario is. Ask yourself, okay, if I trust myself completely and I go down this path of trusting myself, what is my worst case scenario that I can, conceive of? And if you look at your worst case scenario and it's something that is totally doable, something you can completely live with, something that would be completely worth it if you were to achieve whatever that path of yours is headed for, then my opinion is just go for it then. If you can handle the worst case scenario, it's totally worth it, because when you roll those dice, if that's how it feels to you, like a gamble, like your worst case scenario is doable and livable, you're going to be fine no matter what. Your best case scenario though, that doesn't even have words. You don't even know what that's shaped like. You don't even know how brilliant it is, because you can't know that shit until you get there. You can't feel the heat of a star until you are right up in its face, right? Like it's worth it. Sometimes these leaps we take, they are not just terrifying. They require a lot out of us. They're exhausting. And sometimes we're the only person cheering for ourselves. But when we get there, it's for us. And this entire life is for you. You exist to be who you are and to bring forth whatever you are meant to be or whatever your passions are into the world. And then perhaps to even encourage others to do the same. So from the three of us raw honeys talking to you today, we love you. We believe in you. We encourage you. We're here to support you. And in our experience, our very real, very tangible in this moment experience, trusting in yourself only produces beautiful things. They might not be the things that you thought were going to come, and they might take longer to get than you really would like. But they're always, always beautiful, and they're always worth it, just like you. So don't be afraid to trust in yourself, honeys. We love you so much. We're so excited for where your path is going to take you. And we will see you next time on the Raw Honeys.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Raw Honeys podcast. If so, please share it with a friend or post a review. Heather, Chelsea, and I would love to connect with you. Check us out on Instagram at The Raw Honeys, or join our community of honeys on Facebook. Thanks for listening. We wish you nothing but big love.